tell us a little bit about where you fish and kind of what is your bread and butter piece of water. Where are you kind of doing your thing?
All right. Well, my boat's docked at Wilson at Bootlegger's Cove Marina, so I'm 12 miles east of the Niagara River. So we try to fish between Wilson and the bar, and the bar is the structure out in front of the Niagara River. So that piece in between we call 6 Mile. It's right where the river water kind of turns and heads north. There's always some structure there and some current, color change, holds fish pretty much every day of the year. So it's one of my favorite spots down there near 6 Mile between Wilson and the river.
When does the season kind of start out there? When do you start getting going out in that area?
Well, I've got 2 boats. I've got my 21-foot lawn that I use for the river and Lake Erie, and I can also do it for Lake Ontario. So right now it's rigged up, ready to go. As soon as brown trout start showing up, I get out there.
You're fishing now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when the weather permits.
Yeah. Well, there's no ice this year. There's no ice on Erie, Ontario. So I was out actually on Monday trying for brown trout, but our water was a little too dirty and a little too cold, and we had one on and lost it. But so we're ready to go. Usually mid-March is when the fishing starts to get pretty good on our end of the lake.
Very cool. This show is great because it kind of gets things going before people really start getting out of the water. It gives everybody an opportunity to come in, see what's going on, seeing what's new. We're kind of doing the same with you today. Tell us a little bit about weighted steel for salmon fishing and
Sure.
kind of how someone would get started with that.
Well, weighted steel, it's been out for a while. And what it is, it's a long line. It's a heavy line that you use. So it is your main line. So it's like a lead core, copper, weighted steel. It's a long line. The line is the diving device. And so you don't need a diver. You don't need a downrigger. It just, it gets down to where the fish are. And the more you use, the deeper it goes. So, for example, like a 200-foot section of weighted steel is going to run about 40 feet. So if you go to a 400-feet section of weighted steel, you're going to be somewhere, 70, 80 feet.
All right, how does that compare to people who maybe have been running copper programs, something like that? How does weighted steel, what are the advantages and disadvantages to going to weighted steel compared to copper?
Well, weighted steel doesn't go as deep, but it's still close. They say copper is like 22 feet per 100 feet out, and weighted steel is around 20 feet. So even on a 300-foot section, you're still within 6 feet of where a 300 copper would be. A fish can come 6 feet and no problem. It's trout and salmon, I've seen them come up from the bottom from 100 feet and hit a 40 rigger. So that extra 6 feet really doesn't make too much difference. The versatility is it's so user-friendly. It doesn't kink, it doesn't knot, it doesn't tangle. So, it's just letting it off the spool, comes off really easy. And I've done videos where I've dumped 300 feet in the bottom of my boat, big old giant mess, and then just held it and just reeled it right back up. That's the user-friendly part. You can't do that with copper.
Now, are you running it segmented the whole time, or are you running it off the counter? I mean, are you running 300-foot segments? Are you running 200-foot segments? Or are you running? Are you actually dropping it and fishing off the counter?
I usually just use segments.
Okay.
I've got a 200 in segments of 50 feet all the way up to 400. I don't really use anything less than 2 or over 4. I've got some smaller lead core sections if I want to go higher, and downriggers and divers to go deeper. But I have the sections. But you can take a 400 weighted steel and only put 200 feet out, run it behind your boat.
Sure.
So now it's running.
That's the thing I always as kind of a small boat angler, that's what I was struggling with copper was okay, well, you need, if you're going to run, a copper program, you're going to have, 8 rods set up.
Right.
Well, I mean, I don't have storage for 8 rods to run in the boat, where that's where it seems like one of the real appeals of the weighted steel is like you get that versatility where you can, because you can run it off the reel a little bit, that, it just fishes nice. So.
Right. Yeah, I do that. If I'm not sure where the fish are at, run one down the middle, use my 400, my 300, and just put it out 200, then 250, maybe 300. You can easily just dial it in. And it lays nice on the water. It lays nice off the reel. It's just a lot user friendly in my opinion.
Yeah, very good. So I actually forgot, Trevor. I forgot to introduce you, Trevor Sumption from Fish Hawk Electronics as well.
I need no introduction.
I was more important than Trevor this morning.
Yeah, you have the golden mic.
I got the golden mic.
I mean, whoever has the golden mic is the most important. For that.
Say that.
Yeah, we get silver mics, you get the golden mic.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So, why would someone use weighted steel compared to something else as far as getting that weight down there? We talked a little bit about, I guess, the comparisons between copper, but why go that route anyway instead of using maybe inline weight or something like that?
Well, it's just if you're using an inline weight, that's just one more thing you got to take off the line, one more thing you got to clip in, one more thing you got to store or possibly lose if something happens. With the weighted steel, it just undulates in the water, it gets a nice flow, and it's just, you put it out and kind of set it and forget it.
So it's a little stealthier look as well. Yeah.
Very stealthy, and it's just so easy to use. The snap weights, you get a totally different look for those. So I just
you fish both lakes, right?
Sure.
I mean, you're fishing Erie and Ontario, probably Ontario more now with the boats now. But do you use it on Erie for walleyes? Have you?
I do later in the summer. Later in the summer, 200, 250 weighted steel works great to get down. At walleye speed, my 200 goes down about 50, 55 feet, and that's usually where the thermocline is on our end of the Lake Erie and near Buffalo. So the 250 and 200 weighted steels work great. And you don't have to let as much line out. Guys are running their 10 color leads and stuff, and I'm running a lot shorter line.
It kind of ties into Mark's question here off of YouTube, as far as the fishing and traffic. Yeah, I can see where that's an advantage.
Sure.
Fishing the shorter lines.
Yeah, the less line you have out, the better.
Yeah.
Guys running behind you, you're not, they're not running your tackle, and you can do shorter turns. Shorter, quicker turns to maneuver with it because your lines aren't that far away from the boat.
Yeah. So Mark asked, under what conditions can we target kings on the bar? Is he talking about Niagara Bar, or should we, versus fighting all the traffic, fishing the drop off?
Well, the drop off is basically what people consider the Niagara Bar. So there's a red marker buoy out there that marks the shipping channel, and that's basically the east end of the bar. That's kind of where the drop off starts. It's real gradual, but you can still see it on your GPS. You can see those bars getting tight, and when they get real tight, there's another half a mile to the west, and from there the Canadian line is the drop off. So 6 Mile is where it starts to flatten out. So sometimes they want the edge, sometimes they want that flat. So it's kind of hard to say. You just usually play the wind, and that tells you where they're going to be.
Tell me a little bit about the terminal tackle you're using when you're going to use weighted steel.
My terminal tackle, I use Dakota 800, and I have a Tellura copper lead core weighted steel rod that has non-ceramic eyes in it. And that Tellura rod with that 800 Dakota just holds anywhere up to my 400 weighted steel with no problem.
How many rods would you typically run in your spread that have the weighted steel on them?
Well, if I'm going I normally don't run more than 3. I'll run one on a board on one side, one on a board on the opposite side, and then if I need to, I'll run one down the middle. I don't typically run with a mate on my boat, so I try to keep my rods to a minimum, where a lot of guys that have mates will run 10, 12, 13 rods. My basic rod spread is 7, and then I'll go to 9 if I put my 2 boards out, and that's where I'll put my weight.
And if you're running one down the chute, are you running that a long one? Are you running that a deep one? Or are you
usually a deeper one to get it away from the boat a little more and get it down. So when I'm bringing my divers in or my downriggers in, they don't kind of tangle on it. So typically, 300 weighted steel is what I put down the middle if I'm going to run a shoot rod.
Got a message here from Johnny Quest. This is a good question. Hello, guys. What length of leader do you prefer from your steel to lure?
Usually about 30 feet. I don't know if shorter or longer is better, but I like 30 feet. I've heard that if you go longer than 30 feet, your lure will start coming back up. So I use 30 feet, and then, if I have to cut it off a little bit, I'll cut it down to maybe 20. And once it gets around 20 feet, then I'll switch my leader out.
Trevor, you got anything else for Matt on the weighted steel program?
Yeah, it just seems like a really versatile option. I mean, I think probably a lot of people watching, or that'll watch over time have had experience with copper, and you bung a copper up one time, and
man.
you're not gonna forget it, right?
No, exactly.
And I think that's really and then at the same time, it's like once you get something set up, you're not super anxious to go out and change your whole program again. So right. I think it's kind of one of those things that maybe the earlier you can get started with it, the better off you are. Kind of learn from those experiences that others have had, maybe, and maybe a good something if you're just setting up a boat, that weighted steel, it really just sounds like a good place to start as opposed to trying a bunch of different stuff up front. And
well, it's very versatile and it's user friendly.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with copper. Copper works,
yeah.
But it's just not as user friendly. even when you're setting your line out behind the back of the boat, if a diver goes off and you leave that rod, you come back to it, it's usually a bird's nest of nasty copper all tangled up. With the weighted steel, it just kind of just flows off the reel with no problem. So that's a major advantage to it. And you were saying, I forget what you were saying. I had something to add to what you were just saying.
I mean, I think you hit it with the, just with the user friendly part of it. You know, just I mean, anybody that's fish copper, you kind of got that story. It's like, oh, this one time, you're cutting it apart and trying to splice it.
Right. And the other thing with copper too is once you've taken it on and off the reel so many times, I believe that knot where it's attached to your backer gets weak. That was one of my first bad experiences with copper. I put it out and we saw a fish on the fish finder. And he's down there. So grab it and jig the copper. Grabbed it, jigged it, and it broke right off at my backer. I'm like, what the heck happened? Well, that copper's so soft that it just created a kink that you don't see because it's in that reel. With weighted steel, you don't have that problem. There's a new way of terminating it now. It's a hollow core. I'm going to be talking about that in my seminar today at 4:00 on how the new weighted steel comes with that hollow core on the end, so it's easy to terminate. Termination has been an issue for a long time. I've got my way to do it, and it's kind of foolproof, but there's a lot of knots involved.
So can you tell us a little bit about the hollow core part of it? I mean, that's
Well, the hollow core, it's like the old school Chinese.
Yeah, that's what I'm envisioning.
You put it in and then it tightens it up.
Yeah.
So you need an overhand knot and it tightens it up. It's almost similar to a lead core.
Like
knot.
a Willis knot on a lead core. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
It's very similar to that. Cool. So it's smooth through the guide, smooth on the reel. Right. There's no swivel. There's no metal inside your reel anymore to get bunged up on your eyes or anything. And it's gonna really help everybody get started with the weighted steel.
I feel like we're kind of in a fishbowl here with we got the live show going on behind us, and nobody can see it, but everybody's walking by. What in the hell are these guys doing?
Yeah, we've been sitting here now we had things set up yesterday, and all the people that are the vendors have been walking by. They're just kind of like whatever. But now the general public is walking by.
Right.
What's going on?
Yeah, these guys
they're just randomly talking to nobody.
Yeah, we're gonna have Paulus on here in about 7 minutes, and then it's gonna be really weird because we're gonna be just talking.
Right.
Like in that room here.
Right.
But we've got a question, and again, this is probably a little more general.
It's okay.
From Meatman over on YouTube, and he says, with the advancements in technology, what would you say would be your most valuable asset? I'm thinking he's probably talking about fishing, not just like maybe you got something cool at your house.
It's my fish hook. I love.
No, I did not. I did not.
See that coming?
I did not pay you to say that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I fish out in front of the Niagara Bar, 2 mile an hour current down there. So most people wouldn't just drive their boat at 4.2 mile an hour on your GPS because you would think you're going too fast. But with that 1.5 mile an hour current, the fish hawk tells you I'm doing 2.6, 2.8, and I'm at fishing speed. Normally you would just keep your GPS there. Your lures are just swimming through the water without moving at all. So having the right speed and temperature is golden.
All right, a couple questions now coming in here. I like this one from Nick Cook. Nick asks, basically advantages, disadvantages of weighted steel, copper, lead core. Does the weather and the water clarity make any differences to what you would choose?
Not really the weather or if it's really wavy out, most of the time my long lines stay in the boat. I'm a 4 diver, 3 rigger guy when it's really wavy and bumpy. Other than that, they'll all run about the same if you're running them on any type of planer board. The calmer the better, and then when it starts getting really wavy, they all go away. So I don't think there's an advantage there.
That's something I noticed about captains like Matt, guys that catch fish consistently, is they let you guys let conditions tell you what you're going to do. You're not going out every day with a preconceived, this is what I do. I'm going to do this every day, and I'm going to do it the same way. No, I mean, it's like, okay, well, this is going to be a mess.
Sure.
So I'm going to fish the way I can fish to be efficient. And right. I think that's I notice that with guys where, a lot of us have a tendency to, I'm going to put everything out that I had out yesterday just because it worked. Well, you just have to react to that. So
sometimes I only run 5 rods just to be more maneuverable. If I've got a pot of fish that's only a half mile wide, if I've got boards out and I've got long lines, I got to make these huge, long sweeping turns. With 3 riggers, 2 divers, I can just turn on a dime and go fish instead of waiting 45 minutes to get back to my fish. So when it's high sun, flat water, really calm, that's when your weighted steels are really going to show their worth, because the fish are a little more spooky, a little bit more away from the side of the boat, so that stealth definitely helps out.
All right, we're going to be talking a lot of trolling over the next 4 days, but one of the things that I keep seeing more and more of are guys going out and trying to jig fish up. And I think when it comes to kings and these types of things, it becomes even more exciting and more fun. Mark Holliday asks, any suggestions for when to try to jig up a king on the bar?
Early. If you want to jig kings, you want to get here late April, early May. They'll even come right into the river channel. There's a green marker buoy. I mentioned the red marker buoy. That's the outside shipping channel. The green marker is the inside shipping channel. And in there, the river channel is 85 to about 65 feet deep. Comes up to a spot that's 20 feet. So you can actually catch kings on that first rise coming out of the river in April. Before
they
move
live
out.
wire, having smoking one on a jig.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. So that's we fish lake trout on that area of the bar with mag lips, Yakima mag lips, and the last few years, which is the way the springs have come about, we've had kings mixed in with a lake trout. We're running 10-pound test with a little plug and medium heavy rods, 7 to 8.5 feet. Same thing, just
come and rip it. Yeah.
So when those kings get in there with those lake trout, it's a great time to jig, because you'll get all kind of stuff. There's cohos, there's browns mixed in. So, but you want to be closer to the river when you do that.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
So your charter is Wet Net Fishing Charters, and you're out of Wilson most of the time, but you do move if you need to move.
Yes.
People want to reach you. They can go to your website at getthenetwet.com. And then we were talking before the show, you just returned from Costa Rica. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh man, if I could have stayed longer, I would have. We caught mahi, we caught tuna, we caught sailfish, bluebird skies, gin clear water. We saw big, huge leatherback turtles, spinner dolphins, flying fish. I mean, I tell you what, if
living right when you're doing that,
I'm telling you. And Costa Rica is still reasonable enough where you can do a fishing trip. It was just me and my wife. We didn't have a bunch of people. We rented a car. We stayed at a couple different places. It's reasonable enough, the food, that you can do it without really breaking the bank. And the fishing down there in South America is off the chart.
Yeah,
and pretty nice down there this time of year.
Oh yeah.
Better than upstate New York, right?
Oh yeah,
I was waiting for that shoe to drop.
Yeah, we had a snowstorm as we were leaving. We sat on the tarmac in Buffalo, looking out the window, and you couldn't see the wings. We're like, this is not going to be good. We're stuck in Buffalo.
Yeah,
we want to go to Costa Rica. So after about sitting there for another extra hour, we got a break in the weather, and off we went. So. And then it snowed for another 4 or 5 days, and we were happy with our.
And you didn't care.
No, we were on the beach getting sunburned. It was perfect in February.
Very good. Well, Matt, really appreciate you taking
thanks,
time
Chris.
to come see us.
Thanks, Trevor.
Good
seeing you.
Also coming to the show and just sharing your knowledge with the people in the show. I know you got a seminar coming up here later today. So, just great to have you, and great to have you here in the building as well.
Thanks. Anytime, just let me know, and I'll give you some useless information.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Matt Yablonsky, Wet Net Charters.